Hi, everybody, and thank you for being here today. And thanks to Pubstack for hosting this lovely session with Eyeota. I'm going to tell you a bit about Eyeota before I go on to introducing ourselves, as well as the topics we're going to cover. Eyeota is a global audience data technology provider that works with brands, data owners, and publishers to onboard, enrich, and activate their data assets across global advertising channels. We bring a depth of experience in adapting data strategies to be privacy conscious, addressable, and scalable in omni-channel environments. We help publishers unlock the value in their first party data by transforming it into addressable audiences for brands to access across our direct integrations with DSPs, DMPs, as well as social channels. Founded in 2010, Eyeota has offices in Australia, Asia, Europe, and the US, and was recently acquired by Dun & Bradstreet. My name's Niki Chana, and I'm Customer Success Director at Eyeota, and I am here with Rob Armstrong, our Senior Vice President of Product.
Hi, Niki.
Hi, Rob. Lovely to see you. I just want to say that Rob has a wealth of experience in the data space and is building out Eyeota's product strategy, which is really, really exciting for us. Publishers understand immensely the valuable role that they play in the media landscape, not to mention society as a whole. What's harder to see for many is the amount of power that they also hold within today's advertising landscape, provided they know how to wield it during a time of tremendous change, which we're in, and that is to unlock revenues. The topics we're going to cover today are the advertising landscape, value of publishers, as well as first-party data strategies. So, hi, Rob. Thanks very much for taking the time to speak with us today. So moving on to the first question I'm going to ask you, Rob, is can you share a bit more detail as to how Eyeota works with publishers and data providers?
Absolutely, Niki. Super excited to talk about this very important subject. And as you said, there is a lot of change, both already happening, especially in places like Europe with GDPR and coming down the line. So very hot subject matters we'll touch on today. So Eyeota offers a number of services to publishers. Bottom line is we help monetize audiences. We help create value out of the audiences that publishers have. And that comes with extending audiences, enriching them, extracting out based on taxonomies and verticals of data, discovering who your audience is, and allowing that to be distributed across the ad tech ecosystem for activation, monetization, et cetera. And we'll talk a bit about sort of the things that we're building, but at the core, identity is under quite a bit of crisis right now with cookies going away, said to be going away. Now that the data is shifted, so we're expecting that new date to hold, but it's both a time that frankly could be a bit anxiety ridden, but also has a lot of potential and opportunity.
Great, that's really good to hear, which actually leads me on to my next question. So the state of the digital industry, you can say, is in a flux at the moment. What are your views on the ecosystem currently?
Yeah, so there's obviously the building block economically that we've been using to create audiences, to create value, and to exchange information in the open web. The cookie is said to be going away, and it already has in certain environments already. And then separately in the mobile world, we're seeing Apple in particular take very strong stances and start to wipe out the identifier in the mobile context. And this is disrupting a lot of things. The other sort of over the last 10 years emergence has been walled gardens, such as Facebook and Google and LinkedIn, that have a tremendous amount of first-party data and user-provided registration activity, both data from the user declared and then also behaviors the user creates in the environment of a Facebook. So these ecosystems have gotten incredibly powerful. But one of the things that's fascinating is when you go to LinkedIn, I deleted my Facebook a long time ago, so let's just take LinkedIn. When you go to LinkedIn, how much content is actually referring out to open publishers? An unbelievable amount. There's certainly a great sort of unlocking of user-generated content there where I can go and see what my colleagues are writing about, but so much of it is linked out to the open web. And the open web is really where this broad, vast network of information is available. And so there is this interesting pendulum battle going on between user rights, user privacy, user controls of their data, and commerce, free flow of information to unlock what advertisers want, which is they want to reach specific people, specific personas to get their message out and to grow their sales.
Absolutely. And in terms of all these changes, as well as advertisers being able to reach their audiences, how would you say that, how does this in fact impact publishers?
Yeah. Well, I think this is where it gets exciting for publishers, even though it may not seem that way, in the sense that there's still quite a bit of debate in terms of how valuable is that cookie to a publisher's business. But what we can talk about is the cookie itself was never built for what it's doing in terms of creating an audience profile. Consumers see these files get added to their machines. Certain companies have taken advantage of that, tried to illuminate these things. One of the challenges has been the context of third party, like Eyeota, and most of the partners in the ad tech ecosystem we work with are very unknown. They're not household names to the average consumer. And so when a consumer sees that all these companies are creating a file on their device and this tracking, it gets admittedly scary. Now, what is actually going on behind the scenes? And that's simply creating connectivity to allow for an exchange of information of things as simple as I'm interested in an automobile now, or that I work for a company that's of this company size. In the world of product where we build these audiences, that has been the intent the entire time. Now, there are some cases where this can create a combinatory, where if I combine a bunch of these segments together, maybe I can get closer to a person. And so even though 5-10 years ago, it was very much gospel that a cookie was anonymous, now we're saying it's not necessarily anonymous, it's pseudonymous. It could actually get to a person eventually. So back to publishers, the cookie is something that, because of the nature and need for Eyeota to work with Trade Desk, we have to bring their cookie to our audience. Trade Desk is to bring our cookie to their audience. And you blow that up over 100 different companies all having to interchange. It creates what's called data leakage for publishers, which is where a lot of this is just to create linkage to monetize that media impression, but some of it creates an exhaust and an ability for even an advertiser to harvest audience data that's not necessarily theirs. It's the publishers, and it's a challenge, and publishers have very much struggled to control and rein this in. So without a cookie, there is great potential and sort of power shift back to publishers who have the relationship with the consumer and who have this amazing opportunity to bring the consumer into this entire value exchange. And it's something I think we're still in early days of actually unearthing and untapping as an industry.
Absolutely. So in that case, and the challenges, what is the upper hand that publishers can play to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, so I think the most important concept here is the idea that traffic will not be all treated equal. And without a cookie, the biggest challenge is how do I know that this individual, this person browsing my page right now is meaningful to a brand, is meaningful to a particular audience segments, a brand in terms of their first party data and maybe a retargeting campaign. And when it comes to one-to-one identity, that has become very much a discussion around registering users and what's referred to as authenticated traffic. So this is where typically an email address and a consent mechanism is very explicit, where the user is voluntarily giving their information. This has nothing to do with the browser default choices. It effectively gets out of any dependency on how the browser or other technologies might treat the user by default, and makes it explicitly a user's choice. I'm going to hand you my information, and then I'm going to get something in exchange. I think the challenge, and there's strategies we'll talk about with authenticated. Then there's the world of unauthenticated, which today we know as cookies, and tomorrow looks somewhat different without cookies. There are universal IDs that have solutions to unearth and maintain some degree of profile. And then there are concepts in the Google sandbox, such as Flock or such as interest groups, which also have a lot of potential in this context. And I think that a very significant point here is that there is no longer just average traffic. There is authenticated and unauthenticated. Each of them need their own strategy.
So, Rob, what would you say in terms of publishers encouraging audiences to sign up? How can publishers encourage audiences to sign up, log in, or subscribe with their valuable personal information? Also, just to add to that, how can publishers be more creative when driving users to opt-in data?
Right. So this is hard. It's easy to say, it's harder to do. The friction point right now that needs a lot of thinking as an industry is the reality of a consumer today who can do a quick search. They want to find out info about some show. What's the best shows on Netflix? They do a search, they find a page, they go there, they want to spend 30 seconds on this page. But suddenly now there's an email address request. Well, I want to spend 30 seconds with you. Frankly, I don't want to create a relationship where now I'm going to get emails in my inbox, my inbox, and it's going to get cluttered. You blow that up like 10, 20, 30 times over the course of a month, a year, becomes very unwieldy to the consumer. So the idea of just presenting a wall in front of every visitor who visits a page is an aggressive tactic. Unless you're New York Times or you have very high quality content that's sought after to build that user base, you have to be more surgical and think about what are the pieces of content that really would entice someone to spend that time and invest that time. And then secondly, what are some things that I can do with regard to that exchange of information to help the user? So one idea would be allowing them to log in with a platform they've already logged in with. Another would be offering them additional incentive or functionality or tools in the process of logging in. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in this arena, and I think we're still early with it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that in terms of looking at users as individuals and becoming more creative with that prompt. So my next question, which is related to that, what would you say is the challenge with today's prompts? Is it almost alluding to what you just recently said in terms of treating that one user the same? Or is there anything else that you can add to that?
I think that's part of it. I think that there's a lack of consistency. So from a consumer perspective, if each prompt that I go to across my daily digital life looks different, then the disorientation is discouraging. It adds complexity to my life, and I would probably prefer to avoid it. So that to the degree there can be a bit of standardization, a bit of collaboration between publishers, that would be interesting for the consumer. For the publisher, I think it needs to consider, what do I know about this user? Again, the context of them on my page, and have they come to my site several times? Maybe I don't ask the first time. Are they on their second page session within the context of having a rich engagement experience? Well, now they're showing that this consumer is showing they're more interested. I also think anything that can help address this idea that once I give you my email, now I'm going to have a relationship with you ongoing, like help me understand why, help me as a consumer, get it past that issue. I think that's also a challenge and opportunity.
Thank you. Great. So I wanted to ask this question because this is probably looming on lots of publishers as well as advertisers' minds. By the end of 2023, majority of all of us will expect to live in a cookieless world. Rob, in your view, what does the loss of the third-party cookie represent for publishers as well as advertisers? There's a two-part question there.
Right. Well, it certainly represents a dramatic change in the way we know things today. I think custody of data, importance of data, we're already seeing brands spending a lot more time caring about the data they use. They're no longer letting it be any old third-party source. And they're also, similar to publishers, building a first-party data generation strategy to gather more and create more direct relationship with consumer. So I think we'll see more of that and finesse at the last mile. And then separately, we're very unsettled as far as what this unauthenticated world looks like. And to be honest, that's likely the majority of traffic, well, no, maybe it'll be the majority of revenue. We know an authenticated user will be much more valuable. How valuable is time to tell. So I think that's one of the hard things right now is we don't necessarily know where the puck will land. We have regulators involved that are trying to weigh the balancing between providing publishers a sound business model, but also providing that privacy and control to the consumer. So while we say end of 2023, and we do take the timelines are now transparent on privacysandbox.com, we're checking that very frequently, and we're watching it intently. The details within these proposals are still quite vague, and so all that said, I think it's reasonable to be excited about post 2023 in the sense that for the first time in a very long time as an industry, we'll have some clarity on what we can build against, what will be stable, what we can trust and orient around. We'll have standards and a way of innovating again instead of this context we're in where we're quite defensive and we're trying to hold on, and we're placing a lot of bets. We're putting our chips on the table, but we don't necessarily know where it'll fall. So it's a difficult time to really build a very long-term strategy. The only exception is where we were talking about first-party data and known authenticated users. That is a very clear, obvious priority right now.
Great, and this leads me to my last question. Rob, I was wondering, or a lot of us are wondering, how do you think advertisers can prepare for a cookieless world, and what type of data platforms should advertisers be exploring?
Advertisers.
Yeah.
So I think both advertisers and publishers should be thinking about diversification. So this is a classic sort of investment portfolio of your own assets, as well as in the context of media campaigns and budget and how it's allocated, as well as in the context of revenue sources. So on the advertiser side, there are a number of shiny objects right now that may or may not be really, really valuable in the future. One of them is contextual targeting, which was a big strategy before we graduated to audience targeting, because we realized that actually the audience is super important to understanding who I'm reaching, and it's much more effective performance ROI wise. That said, contextual doesn't need cookies, and so let's give it a try. So that's something that's running and gaining some test budgets, and we'll see if that remains as a big strategy, or if we will graduate post 2023 to sounder audience approaches. The other shiny object that's getting a lot of buzz right now is clean rooms, and they are the lawyers like them. They're a way to exchange information without the nitty gritty of infosec reviews and trust between parties that don't have trust, and controls on regulatory data exchange and limiting that exchange. The challenge with clean rooms is they're not scaling. They're not really creating the volumes that would allow for actual full replacement of something like a DMP. So it's good to have your toe in the water. It's good you try clean rooms. I think one of the things that's really important here to emphasize is like first party data is great, always valuable, get more of it, no question there. But third party data it will continue to be extremely critical to outcomes, to and making that first party data more valuable through enrichment and through extending reach, because you're always going to be looking, how do you get more first party data if you don't know who else to go get to come to your first party? So for advertisers, I think trying different strategies, and similar with publishers in the sense that the one difference I would say is publishers should be realizing that, you know, in the history of the ad tech ecosystem, publishers have had, in the arms race, the dollars have been really going into the buy side. The DSPs and the flow of capital starts with the buy side. Publishers on the other side have historically seen fractions of the total spend. In the future, with the mass of direct consumer relationship, publishers have a lot of power. Publishers should know that. Publishers should be working with vendors that help them maximize that revenue. Publishers should also be diversifying who they work with. There are some solutions that create a closed ecosystem. Those are very open. And I think that's important. And publishers, if there's vendors that have a fixed fee versus ones that will work on upside of the revenue they generate, and publishers should be firm about working with those who are partnering with them and not looking to build a SaaS fixed fee model with them unless they're very certain it's super critical. So I would recommend no exclusivity with any partner.
Perfect. Excellent. Rob, this is really, really helpful. And to round up, the key takeaways we got from this session was to experiment with your strategy in terms of look at diversifying vendor relationships and exploring other technology and partners that could actually help push with the cookieless world. Make a start on the cookieless strategy, taking into consideration this coming year as well as post-cookieless world, as well as develop the value exchange with your users. Is there anything that you'd say that you'd like to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty comprehensive. I would say that I think generally the times are there could be some disruption. I think one of the interesting dynamics we'll talk about, since we're talking across the pond right now, Niki, is typically in the history of ad tech, MarTech, a lot of the innovations has started, not all, but a lot of it has started in the US, Silicon Valley, et cetera, and then has been adopted by Europe, closely following. One of the fascinating dynamics of this whole theater of cookieless is publishers in particular in Europe are much more mindful today of what's coming because they've been through GDPR. They know what's at stake. And I think Europe has an opportunity to lead in the cookieless strategy in a way that we haven't seen before in terms of global innovation within this arena. So I think that's very exciting for you all you chaps in Europe, that you are on the cutting edge, and we are seeing that from the Eyeota global perspective,
which is quite refreshing in a way, because I think the US has led when it does come to certain technologies, strategies, but it would be interesting to see the build up towards 2023 and then what happens after that. So yeah, I just want to thank you for your time today, Rob. It was absolutely amazing to speak to you. And if the rest of you want to find out more around Eyeota product strategy, or even just talk more, feel free to visit our website, which is www.eyeota.com. Thanks for your time. It was a huge pleasure, and we'll
Thanks,
hear
Niki.
from you soon. And thanks, Rob. It was really, really helpful.
That was fun.
No, it was really good fun. I saw this. I think we're still on, but I saw this. Oh, are we off? Are we on?